Hi, this is Lisa Andy Garcia, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Transforming Your Child One Step at a Time. So in today's video, we want to talk about getting the basic nutrients. So our children, especially the ones that struggle, they're basically depleted in nutrition, even if you feel like you are providing them a clean, organic diet, because if you've noticed, they're picky eaters, so just by default, they're not getting in everything they need. Two, they are not digesting their food the way that they should be, between a lack of hydrochloric acid or enzymes, or for whatever reason, they're not digesting their food. And three, they're not absorbing, if they are digesting, they're not absorbing everything because the inside of the intestinal wall is blunted, inflamed, leaky, or whatever, so it's not absorbing. So they're either picky and not eating it, they are not digesting it, or they're not absorbing it. So we're going to talk about in another session exactly what to or not to eat. That'll be a whole nother video. But in this video, we're going to talk about some of the basic nutrients that kids need, minerals and vitamins, essential fatty acids, and amino acids. Okay, so these are going to be some of the foundational nutrients that the kids need. If you're wondering, even for yourself, what are some of the signs of general nutrient deficiency or mineral deficiencies? So we can look at different parts of the body, such as our nails, our mouth, our skin, our hair, and our eyes. So for our nails, if you ever notice the little white marks on your nails, that's either zinc or magnesium, usually zinc deficiency. So for hair falling out, that would be a sign of biotin, zinc, B6. Brittle hair would be more like, I remember my one son when he was little, it kind of felt like straw. That's an essential fatty acid deficiency. And for skin, something like acne would be, you could look at zinc and B6. And so for keratosis, which are those little bumps in the back of the arm, you can look at things like vitamin A, essential fatty acids, food sensitivities, especially gluten, and maybe in vitamin E and some of those things. The dark circles under the eyes, especially if they're intermittent and they come and go, those are what we call allergic shiners. This part of the face right here is reflective of the kidneys. So we know that there are some issues going on, either stress in the kidneys or some food sensitivities, some allergies, maybe some phenols. Dark circles under the eyes can also be a sign of stress and lack of sleep as well. And the mouth, if you have canker sores or cracked lips, that can be a sign of vitamin B deficiencies. A cold sore is actually a virus. Bleeding gums is vitamin C. And a loss of taste and smell would be related to zinc deficiency. So there are things that you can just observe and then kind of start to associate, oh, I think that there's some different mineral deficiencies going on. So minerals are critical for cell function, right? So in the cell, you have the active transport for things to get inside the cell and outside the cell, and all of that has to do with mineral balance. And the electrolytes help transport the toxic waste from the cell into the lymph system. And if we have a mineral deficiency, then those bonding sites where the minerals should be, that's when the heavy metals can come in and bond to those sites. So one of the best ways to prevent a heavy metal issue, especially if you know that you have to be around it, is to really load up on your minerals to make sure the minerals are in their spots so the metals can't get into those spots because they compete for those same bonding sites. And so we have like macro minerals, and then we have trace minerals. So the macro minerals are more the electrolytes, which is the calcium, magnesium, the sodium and potassium. So those are the minerals that are really responsible for all the cell action. And then we have the trace minerals, which things like selenium, copper, all the trace minerals, and those are important for all different kind of functions in the body. Magnesium is one of the most important minerals that we need, and it's is often quite deficient. So there's a few different forms if you want to take it orally, and that I would recommend. There's a bunch of forms that you can find, but the best ones, the magnesium threonate, especially if you have a child with a neurological issue, or you yourself are suffering from something brain related, the magnesium threonate crosses the blood-brain barrier. The other forms of magnesium don't, so it depends on what you need it for. If you're getting cramping in your legs, then the magnesium threonate might not be the one that you want to choose. The other forms would be magnesium malate and glycinate, and those are very absorbable forms of magnesium. There's some other forms of magnesium that you can use topically. So, for example, there's like spray. This is like a magnesium oxide, chloride, magnesium chloride, and it can be in a gel. This is a gel from Bionutrients. And then this is this is an Epsom salt cream. So Epsom salt, if you ever have an issue, any kind of a flare-up, cramping, the best thing to do is just throw a couple cups of Epsom salt in a really hot bath and soak in it, because you're going to absorb it right away. It's magnesium sulfate, but it's one of the best quick ways to get in your magnesium, and you can throw other minerals in there as well to absorb it, or a foot bath. You can use it as a foot bath or just a whole body bath. You want to be hot so your body's pores open up, and then you can absorb it. So here's some forms of magnesium. Potassium is another very under consumed mineral, but very, very important because of that sodium potassium pump. So we might tend to get too much sodium and not enough potassium, but you need the balance between the two. Just like the magnesium, it's the calcium and magnesium balance. So we tend to have too much calcium. We kind of want to err on the side of taking more magnesium than too much and then calcium, because the calcium, if it's not in the right spots, it starts to float around in our body, and that's when we start to get problems with kidney stones, and it gets into our arteries. And so free floating calcium, when it's not where it belongs, which is in our bones, is a big problem. So we want to make sure that calcium magnesium balance is there, and then we want to make sure that sodium potassium balance. So a good way to get your potassium is through soups. So just Google and look up all the potassium-rich foods, such as celery, and you want to put all the potassium-rich vegetables into a soup, and then make a broth. And you can drink it, or just add it to your soups, or add it to your other cooking, and that's a really good way to get in your potassium. Now, sodium is important. So some people, we are a little bit afraid of sodium, just because of the media. So we do need that balance of sodium potassium. Celery has a really great balance of sodium potassium. Even if you have high blood pressure, you still need sodium, but you need natural sodium, good sodium. You don't need table salt. So table salt is processed, and it's not a natural form. But the best forms is a really good sea salt. So Celtic sea salt is very good. You can use Himalayan salt, Redmond salt. The only issue that some people have with using Himalayan salt is you have to really know the process, because since it's in a mountain and in a rock, that there is, if you know that you're prone to heavy metal toxicity, you might not want to use it, because there could be metals in the salt, just because it was in a salt mine. So Celtic sea salt is a very pure form of minerals. Well, the good thing about Himalayan salt and Celtic sea salt is not only does it have sodium, it has all the different trace minerals, about 84 different trace minerals. So it's if you want to just beef up your trace minerals, I just get a bottle of water, and I take a pinch of the salt, maybe a quarter teaspoon of salt, and then you just drink it throughout the day or all at once. And another way that you can get in your trace minerals, this one's a little bit pricey, but I really like it. It's ketone hypertonic or ketone isotonic. So there's two different forms. This is from Quicksilver Scientific. But the ketone minerals come from really deep trenches off the French coast in the ocean. And the isotonic has a ratio that's very similar to your natural body consumption, so it doesn't even really taste very salty or anything. This one is heavier concentrated, so especially if you're trying to really repair your body, you would want to use this one, or you can take a little bit and dilute it. Some other minerals that are very typical needs for our children are going to be zinc and selenium. So zinc, well, you kind of already mentioned, can be related to your skin. It's really important for your immune system. And selenium is just another one. It also helps, selenium also helps with the virus load that a lot of us have. We have a lot of dormant viruses, and so selenium can help with that too. So selenium and zinc. Also anxiety. So if our kids we are suffering from anxiety, especially social anxiety, they're finding a combination of zinc and B6 to really help because they're typically depleted. So zinc and B6 are something that you might want to look at if your child is struggling with anxiety, which is now a big thing, okay? So we talked about minerals. So the next thing is essential fatty acids. So we have, the essential fatty acids we need to feed our brain, our skin, our nails, our hair, but obviously our brain is the most important thing, especially with our kids. And we need a balance of omega-3, omega-6, and omega-9. So we don't want to only, consume 3. We do need 6 and 9, but everything has to be in a good ratio. So that's why when you eat a lot of variety, then you can naturally get the right ratios. Omega-3 is ALA, DHA, and EPA. So ALA is found in things like pumpkin seeds, walnuts, soybeans, flaxseed, and canola. And DHA and EPA is found in things like cold water fish, salmon, cod, and mackerel. If you're going to buy a supplement, especially with our kids, you want to find something with a really high DHA because that's really going to be supporting of their brain health. And then we have omega-6, which is also very important. And they even find with ADHD, omega-6 tends to be a little bit more critical than even omega-3. And that's GLA, which is in evening primrose oil. And that can naturally be found in, again, evening primrose, blackcurrant, borage oils, plant, vegetable oils, safflower, peanut, and sesame oils. DHA that we talked about, which is this one, is a long chain polyunsaturated fat, and it builds the neural pathways and protects the brains, blocks the excitotoxicity, increases serotonin, and supports the mitochondria. So inside our cell, we have a mitochondria that creates energy, and it's in every single cell. In fact, some cells have thousands of mitochondria, so we really need to be supporting the mitochondria. So that would be for the DHA. And excitotoxicity is very common when things like MSG. MSG is very excitatory, and GABA is inhibitory. So when we have too much MSG, then we can have too much excitotoxicity, and so the DHA helps with that. Okay, so we talked about minerals and we talked about essential fatty acids, and now we're going to talk about amino acids. So because kids are picky, a lot of our kids are not eating meat, and the protein that's in meat has to be broken down. And when it's broken down, it gets broken down into kind of these like clusters. So you have a protein and it gets kind of snipped into these groups, and those are called peptides. And then those peptides are further broken down into individual components known as amino acids. So those amino acids are what our body needs to reconstruct other proteins that we use in each of our cells. So if those proteins, so even if they eat the meat and they're semi-digested into peptides, if those peptides are not further digested into amino acids, then they are going to, they are either going to do nothing because, so the meat that they consumed is not going to be beneficial, or B, because if they have intestinal permeability, intestinal inflammation, then those peptides can get through and get into the bloodstream, and then we have problems with activating the immune system, crossing the blood-brain barrier, and then causing all kinds of problems. So that's when you hear about like the gluten and the casein. And the reason why a lot of kids, if they can't have gluten, they also can't have dairy, is because there's some peptides in the gluten protein that are the same as the peptides in the cheese protein. So even though the protein isn't the same, the peptides are the same. And so if the blood, if the immune system's already attacking one, then it's probably going to attack the other. So one of the things that we can do in some of the therapies, especially if your child's younger, is to do some amino acid, I don't want to call it a therapy, but amino acid like an intervention. Because if we can give our kids the direct amino acids, then they can absorb that. Hopefully, if their gut is somewhat intact, they can absorb that, and then they can construct the proteins and that their brain needs and the rest of their body needs. So one form of amino acids is chlorella. So I have a little dish of it here. It's green, little green pellets. Chlorella vulgaris, there's a lot of types of chlorella. So chlorella vulgaris is a really good form that digests easy, and it's a very available form of amino acids. So you can give this. Now, some of your little ones are probably not going to be able to even swallow a little pill. So what you can do is if you can get them in capsules and in powder and open it up. You can get it in a powder, or you can crush them, or you can put it in a smoothie using the Vitamix. This chlorella growth factor, it comes in a liquid. So this it comes in this little jar. It's not cheap, but in the long run, it probably, if you're starting young, you can probably save thousands of dollars over time. So chlorella growth factor, it's like an extract from the chlorella that's just the growth factor, and it's very important, even just for brain development, just development in general, the beauty of the face. So it's really good. It's about, I think, like $25 for the little bottle. The dosage is I think that it's 2 teaspoons. We haven't used it, and just, yeah, it's 2 teaspoons. However, if my 19-year-old was 3 all over again, I would pretty much give him the whole bottle every single day. I would just, it's about $25 a day, and I would just budget for a few months and just give him maybe the whole bottle or half a bottle. It tastes like broth, like chicken broth. So you don't have to give it to him direct, but you can just put it in all their food. So whenever I do give it to him, if we make rice, I just pour it in the rice. Sometimes my son's older, so if I want to give it to him, I can give it to him straight. But you can just hide it in the food. It tastes like broth, and it's really easy for them to take. I wouldn't cook with it, only because I don't know if it would change the molecular structure. So I would just add it to food and then give it to them. So something savory. And then along those lines, I have not tried this personally, but I knew somebody who did and had remarkable results, and it was called Neocate. Neocate is it looks like a formula for young children, and it's made with pure amino acids. It's actually marketed to kids who can't digest proteins, which actually is the problem of our spectrum kids. But they're not marketing it to autistic kids. They're marketing it to kids who have a certain diagnosis of not being able to digest their protein, but it's very readily available. It also is about the same amount of money as this, probably about $25 a day. However, some insurances will pay for it, because I know that this person that I knew, she got her insurance to pay for it. In fact, she was in the military, so her TRICARE paid for it, and which ends up, for some people that becomes a miracle, especially when it worked. So she had her child on it for a year, and then he was completely fine. He was actually vaccine injured, but he had all the autistic symptoms, and after a year, then he was fine. So a lot of that is just because when your body becomes into a state, you're just not getting your nutrients. So if this is a way that you can still get the nutrients while you're trying to figure out what's going on the body, it can be a miracle. Or the same proteins can help repair the body. And if you have an older child, you don't want, let's say, a formula, but so Neocate, that company, came out with a new product called Splash. Well, it's probably not new anymore, it's a couple years old, but it's like a juice. So it's basically the same thing, but in a juice form, so then older kids can, or adults can take it, and it's not in a formula. All right, so we talked about just the essential nutrients, some vitamins and minerals, essential fatty acids, and amino acids. So if you can just think of some ways of how you, where is your child or where are you, and what you might want to incorporate into your diet and come up with a game plan. So thank you for joining me on this episode of Transforming Your Child One Step at a Time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.